Hi, my name is Samy, and this is my game audio demo using Wwise on the FPS and open source game Cube. This is a fairly common exercise as Audiokinetic kindly gives us the opportunity to have a Wwise session already linked to the source code. This implies that any sounds you add into the session will be played in the game itself. The exercise is divided into 3 parts, which are 1. Creating assets, 2. Integrating the audio, then 3. Mixing and polishing. There is of course the preliminary step of listing all the sounds you will need before diving into sound design. Step 1. Creating assets. The first and foremost task is to create all of the audio content for the game. This step requires meticulous work and a great sense of sound design skills, as the mixing stage will not save bad sound assets. This first activity brings a main constraint, the limitation of 200 files that the non-commercial version of Wwise has. This has to be taken into consideration when creating the audio, as it leads to a different approach. I have to combine sounds together to reduce the number of files in the session. For example, the rifle, in another situation, would be composed of at least 2 files, one for the shot and another for the reload. Those 2 elements are linked together in order to take less space into my session. Same scenario for some monsters dying. The scream and the body hitting the ground are grouped into one file. As we are taking a look at the sounds I have created, you can notice that I mainly work using sound libraries and layering a lot of audio to produce unique and intricate content. It is very important for me to not sound repetitive or flat. When a player picks up a health item, one of those files is triggered. We are now dealing with what we call feedback audio. The sound played gives valuable information to the player. In that case, something good happened. That positive aspect is outlined by a voice expressing relief, combined with a comforting shimmer. Step 2. Integration. It is now time to implement all of the audio that we have previously created. We will also make sure to be properly organized with our hierarchy. This part is probably the most satisfying as it allows us to experience what we have designed into the game in a 3D environment. Speaking of 3D, there is 2 kinds of audio positioning within a game. 2-dimension sounds that do not rely on a specific position in the game, and 3D ones that do. A 3D source will be only audible if the player is in proximity of it. The attenuation of a 3D asset according to the player distance is highly customizable within Wwise. The further you are from a source, the less volume it will produce, and a low-pass filter is applied to simulate natural distance. Most of the assets are random sound effects that are placed into what Wwise calls random containers. Then the event triggers the container itself, which will then randomly play a sound inside of it. This adds variety and realism, as you do not want to hear the same stuff over and over. I was unfortunately not able to include as many variations as I wanted due to the 200 files limit. I ended up having 199 sounds in my session. When a player health approaches 30, a strong heartbeat followed by a heavy breathing is triggered. In order to do so, we utilize the already created game parameter player health. We get the real-time parameter control function, a very strong feature of Wwise. It will allow us to trigger audio according to what is happening in a game. In fact, the heartbeat and the heavy breathing are always playing in our session. The RTPC brings up the volume so that it becomes audible and increases as the player health lowers. We then add a low-pass filter to the rest of our audio to create this near-death sensation. For the possible underwater scenarios, we use a state. When the player is submerged with water, the state player in water applies a lower pitch and a low-pass filter, cutting the high frequencies to the audio concerned. This helps simulate how sound is perceived underwater.
Oh, yes!
I also do not want my footsteps to play when the player is swimming. In order to do so, I have placed a switch container at the beginning that asks the question, is the player underwater? If yes, trigger a silence. If no, trigger the second switch container that asks the question of which texture is the player walking on. You can also notice a sequence container, parent of the texture switch container. It will play a footsteps, then a silence, and so on. As the footsteps are triggered very fast in the code, this allowed adding more time between the step sounds. Step 3. Mixing and polishing. The last and crucial step is to ensure that everything we have done so far sounds cohesive and part of this 3D environment. As mixing will not save bad assets made during step 1, it can certainly ruin good audio if done improperly. A bit of mixing was indirectly done during step 2 by setting up 3D position for our sounds. This provides constant volume variations and stereo panning. The major and most effective tool for our mixing is definitely the playback limit in the Advanced Settings tab. A limit of sound instances prevents the playback of too many audio at the same time. Once the limit is reached, any new signal incoming will be killed. Setting up this limit is mandatory when it comes to elements like monsters. I have set this limit to 3 or 5 for each container because having more than 3 instances playing will be way too much. Even if we have, for example, more than 3 monsters of the same kind on screen, you will not notice a difference. In the end, that feature leaves more space and balances our final result to avoid an overall confusion. That leaves us to adjusting details and polishing our final work. I will now play you a demo of how it all comes together. Thank you for watching.
Listen to your father.
Oh, brother. Better you than me.
Nobody's perfect. What a day. Why me? Leave me alone.
Who cares?
What a day.
Better you than me. Who cares? What a mess.
Listen to your mother.
Yes!
Leave me alone. Not so fast. Why me?
No!
Oh, here comes trouble.
Ouch.
Oh, no! Oops. Why me?
Better you than me. Yes!
Not so fast.
Oh, brother. Yes!
Leave me alone. What a... Oh, no! Nobody's perfect.
Better you than me. Oh, brother.
Why me? Leave me alone. Oh, no! Listen to your father. Leave me alone. How easy was that?